I did not expect the Marvel movie, of all things, to be pro-God.
And I have to say, the message throughout the entire thing, anti-eugenics. All right, guys, welcome back to Red Top Report. I'm your host, Joe Enders. We went to the movies again. This time we saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, everybody knows we're sick of Marvel movies, but before we get into talking about the movie and some of the interesting aspects of it, you better give us your money!
Groot says the Flarkin helpline's still asking for fine money.
And you can give us your money by going to buymeacoffee.com. Links in the description, guys. Go click on it. You can do a single donation or you can do a monthly Joe for Joe donation. So Charlie is back with us again. Charlie, welcome to Red Top again. And we saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And there was I wasn't expecting this Marvel movie to have some of the messaging that it had in it. What were your first impressions?
Yeah, well, my first impression was it was very emotional. There's lots of these flashbacks. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. There are a lot of these flashbacks with Rocket, the raccoon, and it was basically his genesis, how he came about, his backstory. And it's very, very sad. And it's the way they did it was very, very touching. And it really, yeah, the morality, the moral question behind these scenes really speaks to, oh boy, it was pro-life. It was, all lives matter, not today's, hyped up term, all lives matter, but like, how Down syndrome kids in the real world are aborted at much higher rates. The messaging of this movie, you would think is it would say that's wrong. We shouldn't be taking out life just because of some idea that life is not worth living.
Yeah, and I feel like throughout the film they really capitalized on the cuteness of animals, specifically, like baby animals, and they one of the things I noticed is that when you go back to Rocket's flashbacks, which I actually think was by far the best parts of the movie. Yeah. I felt like the rest of everything else was filler except for except for those flashbacks. It was really just a character arc and an origin story for Rocket. It was basically what it was, Rocket Raccoon. And they tried to pull at your heartstrings as much as they could with the usage of animals and showing, otherwise, animals that everybody finds, like cuddly and soft and all those things, like an otter they had a big dumb looking walrus, but like
bunny
and a bunny. Yeah, exactly. Were being experimented on by this villain called the High Evolutionary. By the way, was a terrific villain.
Oh yeah, very well acted, very good villain. I would advocate, actually, as a little tangent, that they make him the new big baddie. Like maybe there's variants of him in the multiverse and make him, because of the other guy's personal issues.
Yeah, didn't he have something going on?
Yeah, a little domestic dispute.
Yeah, we'll put that up, Ronan.
Yeah.
I think that it talks about quite a few things. There was throughout the whole message was, you have to treat people with human dignity. I think that was probably the main underlying thing of all those things, because you saw what it's like for people that were undignified. And I thought one of the most, interesting parts of the movie was that Nebula, which is the blue girl, if anybody doesn't know, with the robot arm. She was somebody who was tortured by her father. And the father was obviously Thanos, who's dead at this point. Now, Nebula, every time she failed at something, she would get a new cybernetic upgrade to prevent her from failing again. Her life was just constant abuse. But when they were going through Rocket's past and seeing what Rocket had went through, she actually looked down and said, "This was worse than anything that I had gone through." I
disagreed with that when I saw that. That was one little tiny detail that I
agreed with it after you saw the story.
Well, I mean, her story is basically the same. She's tormented and ripped apart, and
Then you know what? Even so, I mean that really humanized Nebula quite a bit then, because it made her demonstrate a level of humility, which made you like her more as a character.
To be clear, I don't disagree with maybe the character thinking that, because maybe she's a little bit selfless in her analysis there, thinking I can take this, I can deal with this, but when it's done to someone else, that's crossing the line, and that's actually slightly commendable. But the idea that a human, she's alien, but a human is being tormented like that versus an animal. Now, granted, Rocket's sentient, so maybe he's not really technically, whatever. Anyway, it gets all confusing really fast.
Sure. Anthropomorphizing animals. It's common in movies. We do it all the time.
Yeah, and that doesn't take away from the relatability that we might have towards that character. We can relate to Rocket because we all had a childhood. There were flashbacks where they're in the cages playing and having fun, and you can just get that sense of your childhood. I thought back to my childhood, seeing those scenes, and then it was extra impactful for all of that to change. And there were some other nuanced messaging in this film that really got to me. Not just Rocket having to deal with the loss of his friends at such a young age.
Well, I actually want to go into that real quick just to break that down.
Yeah.
It's what it was is it presented you a childlike innocence, and also in the same breath also watched innocence be torn away in a way that really just, it had you on the edge of your seat, and it also had you actually empathizing with the character quite a bit, to show that the high evolutionary was extremely, it was like an abusive parent.
Yeah.
He was selfish. He was driven by his own desires. He wasn't, it was really showing what a bad parent is, a bad and abusive parent is.
And he quite almost literally is their parent. He created them. He created Rocket and the other characters. And he created an entire civilization.
He didn't create them. He made them sentient.
He had them made.
He made them
in a
sentient.
Sense. In a manner of speaking.
Right.
He created their sentience.
When he found out that one of his creations was I guess powerful.
Yeah.
He flipped out on it. He resented it. He had pride or something like that. It's like the anti-parent, you know what I mean? Where it's like, instead of being proud and cultivating and building it, because you could see he kind of did care about him at the beginning.
Well, he was jealous of Rocket because, again, spoiler alert, but Rocket at a very, very young age is able to solve one of the high evolutionary's little science experiments to help him create a new breed of sentient beings properly so that they can be civilized. And so he's confused. He says to Rocket, I created you. How come you were able to figure this out? He wanted to figure it out for himself because due to pride, he can't let someone else solve this problem. He doesn't just want to create a perfect species. He wants to create the perfect species so that he can be God, which he references later. Someone, one of his subordinates says, for God's sake. And he says, there is no God. That's why I stepped in.
Yep.
It's the messaging is there.
Good.
It's just one layer underneath the story. Another, and it's not, and there's good messaging in the movie that's not just pro-life. That's not just anti-eugenics. Star-Lord and Gamora. They could have gone the route in this movie where, Gamora, because her character is an older version of Gamora before she fell in love.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of the time travel stuff back in Endgame, they could have gone the route of, Gamora finds her true meaning and she falls in love with him again and we're all happy at the end. But no, they went a different route with this story. And this story actually rings a little personal for me. Sometimes you just have to accept that you can't change somebody. Sometimes people are a certain way and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not up to you. It's up to them. And you can't change that. And that's an important message to portray. And they did that with Star-Lord and Gamora. Also, the movie's pro-God.
Yeah, very pro-God. That was the thing throughout it. It was a very like the high evolutionary is somebody pretending to be God and wanting nothing more than to be God and all those other, like I said, he's a lot like the devil.
And so Rocket is on his deathbed,
having his near-death experience.
And he's in heaven. He's in a cloudy white space. And her name was Lila, the otter.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that was what it was.
Fact check me if Ronan, if I'm wrong. She visits him in this afterlife space.
Yep.
And, there's a nice little pleasant dialogue, and Rocket's crying and says, I'm a monster, what about, I was created, and I'm just a, worthless, whatever. And, Lila says, there are the hands that made us, and then there are those hands that guide those hands. Something to that effect.
It was very ancient philosophy-esque type of deal where it's like, the divine craftsman, the god of the gods.
So people in the real world have problems. We're broken.
Yep.
We are forged by the sins of our father.
Yes.
But God guided all of that. It's very touching.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is. And as a viewer, you are encapsulated in the idea that it is destructive, it is disgusting, and it is awful that there is a person out there who's willing to turn people, creations, sentient beings, whatever you want to say, turn these sentient beings into means to an end of creating a perfect civilization. I mean, good grief, how many ideas can we think of that go back to this? You have communism, you have certain elements of fascism as well, where it was all about human perfectibility. It was about making the perfect man.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this thing said is that the only way for a person to truly be good is through God.
Yeah.
That was the message of the movie. It was to reject all these other people. These people are evil, they're prideful, they're selfish, the ones that are playing games, playing God. And it's like, don't worry about those people. Get rid of them. Get that sort of, don't dwell on, the bad and evil things in the world. You need to focus yourself and orient yourself towards God. That was literally the point of the movie. Don't focus on creating the perfect society. You know what I mean? Just focus on being good.
Yes. It was quite a beautiful movie. Certainly, just to kind of get into more of a kind of a review of the movie phase here, the movie was... The best parts, again, were the rocket flashbacks. That was about 10 to 15 minutes of the film. The rest of it's kind of filler, like you said. There are problems with the story. It's a big, giant MacGuffin chase to save Rocket's life, and there's like two parts of that MacGuffin chase that literally could be cut out of the film, and it could be filled in with other aspects like character development and relationship development that would have been much better. There's certainly lots to talk about with that, but you know what? That stuff is boring when we're talking about Marvel. Of course, those aspects of a Marvel movie suck. I'm just surprised that a Marvel movie, actually in today's age, in Phase 4, in the midst of all of these woke stories that have these horrible character stories, that have these horrible messages of like feminism, girl strong, girl go be bad, don't let no man tell you what to do. In the midst of all of that, this selfish kind of like storytelling where like the bad things are thought of as good. We have a movie that's pro-life, anti-eugenics, pro-God, and accepting the reality of your situation, not dwelling on the past.
It's a good movie for young adults to go see.
Yeah.
And it's a good movie probably for for teenagers to go see as well. There's a lot to learn from it. And one of the last things I wanted to talk about, once Rocket was saved, the entire point of the film shifted. It shifted towards saving children.
Yeah.
And also Drax the Destroyer.
Oh yeah, that was an important thing too.
Drax the Destroyer, what did they discover that, everybody thought that he was some bumbling idiot. Everybody thought that he was incapable of making any good decisions or doing anything right. And then what was his purpose at the end of the film? All those children were saved because he was the one that figured out how to communicate to them.
Yep.
And the whole movie was about saving all these children, and then Drax finding his purpose in being a father.
He's not any longer Drax the Destroyer.
Right.
He's Drax the father.
Exactly.
That was up there with that was like, I was like just totally taken aback when that transpired in the very, very, one of the last scenes in the movie. It's just like, wow, they're really coming full circle with every single character's story arc here. So again, the film as a film, not the greatest.
No.
There are aspects of it that were great. There are aspects of it that were kind of subpar.
Though.
The messaging, S tier. This movie is beautiful. And so for all those people out there that maybe you liked Marvel back in the day when it was halfway decent, but now you kind of brush it aside. Like, I frankly I haven't seen all of the Marvel Phase 4 stuff. If you're going to give any of these Marvel movies a second chance at all, I would advocate for this one. Best Disney Marvel movie since Endgame. Obviously, Sony's Spider-Man was pretty good.
Yeah.
But that's Sony. But that was Sony.
Yeah, I do. I think I agree with you. Big hats off to James Gunn, the guy, the director. He did a really fantastic job on this movie. And but yeah, no, thanks for coming on again, Charlie.
No problem.
Guys, I mean, please just go check this out. Anyways, you need to follow us on Instagram, guys. You need to follow us on Twitter. You need to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe, and hit that notifications bell so you know when we're dropping new content. We're going to have Charlie back to do more movie reviews. We're going to be doing more reactions. We're going to be doing all of this. But for now, you guys have a great one, and God bless you.
I am Groot.